It's Tatum time. Could Friday be the jumping off point for a Celtics championship run? Lockout latest with Andy Costabile joining us with the WNBA. What's going on? How's it going to work out? And Mad Max, will he stay or will he go? It's time for Yahoo Sports Daily right now. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we're racked, backed, and stacked to get you ready for everything you need on a wild Yahoo Sports Daily. Tons of guests coming in, tons to get to. It is a massive, massive week, but it's also, we're right around the edge. We're finding out today what the franchise tag's going to look like. We've got tampering right around the window, right around the corner, I should say. I'm making up rooms in the house as we go. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. The NFC East is a division that never sleeps because, my friend,
truly,
the Cowboys over the weekend, Jerry Jones had this quote: "I would bet that we'll be spending more money in free agency than we have." With free agency right around the corner, let's take a look at the NFC East and figure this out. Is it smart for the Cowboys at this point to spend more money in free agency than they ever had in this window?
Yeah. Why not? I mean, the Cowboys just had the number one offense in the National Football League and a crap defense that cost them a spot in the postseason. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you just franchise tag George Pickens. Dak is coming off of an MVP caliber season. Yes, you capitalize on that window. You push all of your chips into the middle. So, the rationalization, if this is to come to fruition, then I applaud Jerry Jones for doing that. I applaud any owner for trying to capitalize on a window. I applaud any owner for doing whatever it takes to spend money to become better. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. I don't buy it. Like, Jerry Jones is going to spend money, blah, 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 blah. Heard it all before. Jerry Jones is saying it's playoffs or bust, blah, 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 blah. We hear that every single off season because Jerry knows when he says that we're going to spend more money than we ever have before. He knows that that's going to be the lead topic on Yahoo Sports Daily the next day. He knows that when he says that, it's going to get aggregated on social media and be headlines and articles and be discussions on sports talk shows across the country. He's all talk and very, very little action. Because didn't Jerry Jones say this last year? Didn't Jerry Jones say that they were going to go for it, that they need to make the postseason, that missing out on the playoffs wasn't good enough, that it was Super Bowl or bust, you want to do whatever it took to get a Lombardi back to Dallas? Stop me if you've heard that before. Because that's exactly what Jerry Jones said last offseason, and then he, drumroll please, traded Micah Parsons. So sure, Jerry, you can say that. You can talk all you want about how good you want to be, how high your expectations are, how much money that you want to spend in the offseason. All of that is great fodder. I will not believe it until I see it with my own two eyes, the actual transactions and the actual players being signed. I will not trust Jerry Jones or believe Jerry Jones at his word.
Well, look, part of this is the fact that everybody spends more money every year now just by nature of the beast, right? The salary cap keeps going up in such an incredible rate that, you know, a few years ago it felt like teams were trapped, and now all of a sudden, as we get every year, this is my caution to everybody every year. If you're looking right now at the available free agents and you're salivating over the players you think your favorite team is going to sign, just stop, because most of those players that are worth anything are going to end up staying where they are because the salary cap is higher than everyone expects and people rework it and they find a way to keep that money. So if Jerry's answer is we're going to spend more than ever, I mean, I guess, but at the end of the day, a reminder that salary cap money is best used keeping your own. So if you're telling me they're going to spend more than ever because they're finding a long-term deal with Pickens, that they're trying to reward some of the players they have on contract on their roster right now that they've drafted, that makes a lot of sense to me. But as you see here, Todd Archer, who brilliantly covers this team, points out that they can create a ton of cap space just by making a few restructuring. So they can spend all the money they want. What's curious to me is that this particular offseason, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think this might be the worst offseason we've ever seen in NFL history. When you start talking about the draft combined with free agency, and then you look at the number of impact players that are actually available, we always see an overpay for mediocre talent in free agency. That's sort of the burden of the beast. I think we're going to see that at catastrophic levels this year. I don't believe most of the players hitting the open market are truly going to make most teams drastically better. The way to get better is to draft. And this year's draft lacks some of the talent that we've seen in some other years. So if your quick fix answer is we're going to suddenly go from being an 8-win team to being a 12-win team on the precipice of the Super Bowl, I don't know that the players are out there. So to me, Jerry Jones coming out and saying, we're going to spend more than we ever have, is just another example of Jerry Jones doing what he does. Like, he's grabbing his megaphone and he's getting eyeballs and attention. We need to remember that at its core, the Cowboys need to be run like every other quality team, which means doing the smart thing, not just the fun, flashy headline thing. And the smart thing this year might not be to break the bank.
But is there an owner in sports that is more talk and less action than Jerry Jones? Like, when he says that, what does that mean? We're going to spend more money than we ever have. Okay. And what are we addressing? What do we do? Who are you going after? Like, what is your plan? What's your offseason plan? Because last season you told me that you had to stop the run, and then you traded Micah Parsons and your defense stunk. So what exactly is the plan here for the Dallas Cowboys? I think that gets everybody really riled up and everybody really excited. We're going to spend all this money. Woohoo! And I do applaud owners that are willing to spend money, because I will get up here and rip cheap owners across the National Football League, like Mike Brown and the Cincinnati Bengals, or any of these other cheap owners across the league who aren't willing to spend what it takes to actually create a Super Bowl contender. So I'm not ripping on Jerry Jones for being willing to spend. I'm ripping on Jerry Jones for talking about spending and not putting his money where his mouth is. I mean, look, prove me wrong, Jerry Jones. If you've got this masterful offseason plan to acquire all of this defensive talent, whatever you need to do to run back offensively what you did last year, then I will be the first person to say bravo to you, old Jera. I can't necessarily hold my breath.
Just a reminder, the Cowboys are worth $13 billion. And last year, according to Forbes, they were the most profitable sports operation in the entire world, making $629 million in profit last year. So they can afford to spend more than ever. What about some of their other division rivals, right? As we look at the NFC East as a whole, reports are out there now that the Giants are going all in on Kenneth Walker III. I keep thinking about this. Like, everybody says, well, what about Cam? What about Cam? I feel like, Caroline, more than ever, we are back in a two-back sort of world. We see teams all the time want to use two running backs. So Kenneth Walker III with Harbaugh and the Giants, with Cam, with some of the offensive weapons. I got to be honest, I love this. I'm madly in love with the concept of Kenneth Walker III in an offense run by Harbaugh's team overall.
I am madly in love with the idea of Kenneth Walker III staying in Seattle. I don't think the Seahawks should let him out of the building. Like, we're all willy-nilly talking about how easily the Seahawks are going to let the reigning Super Bowl MVP go. And I'm not that quick to say that. But, let's just live in a world of fantasy land where Kenneth Walker, like the Giants do make a big push for Kenneth Walker, that they throw, a blank check his way and he does end up in New York. I do love that. And good for the Giants. I think the Giants' number one priority this offseason, one, of course, getting healthy. Two, putting the right pieces around Jackson Dart to save him from himself, first of all. And that was the right coaching staff, and that's the right pieces, veteran pieces around him. But also just making sure that he doesn't have to do too much. Jackson Dart has the mentality, and I think it's a good one to a certain extent. But Jackson Dart has the mentality of, F it, I'll do it myself. Jackson Dart has the mentality of, I'll put Superman's cape on whenever I need to. It's good to have that kind of edge. It's good to have that kind of grit. It's good to have that kind of willingness to do whatever it takes to win football games. But it also comes at the expense of Jackson Dart. How many times did we see last season Jackson Dart just getting too big of a head and putting himself in harm's way? The Giants aren't going to win football games if Jackson Dart is unavailable and in the blue tent. So I think what adding Kenneth Walker would do is, adding a veteran piece and a veteran presence around Jackson Dart. I think the second thing that it would do is, I always believe that a young quarterback or a rookie quarterback's best friend is a veteran pass-catching running back, or just a reliable go-to kind of guy. That's exactly what Kenneth Walker can add to this offense. So Jackson Dart doesn't need to be Superman. He can have that kind of, easy pitch it off to Kenneth Walker, easy kind of go-to guy in an offense that does have a lot of young pieces around it. So I'm with you. I would love this.
Yeah, look, I know that the Giants need some help on the offensive line. They have bigger fish to fry in the eyes of many. I think it's become clear, whether it's Kenneth Walker III or whether you buy some of the reports that they're looking at Jeremiah Love high in the draft. I believe that the Giants are going to address the running back position with the star because, to your point, it takes some of the weight off of Jackson Dart's shoulders. And when you start talking about the weapons they could have, I'm telling you right now, in my belief in Harbaugh combined with the weapons that they have on both sides of the ball for the Giants, I think they underperformed last year. I think the Giants are poised better than any of the last place teams from last year to be able to jump their way into contention for first in their own division, depending on how they handle this offseason. So it will be fun to watch. One other big rumor we have in the NFC East that won't go away, speaking of trade rumors that won't go away, going to be a theme in this show. A.J. Brown, Albert Breer reports the Eagles asking price for A.J. Brown is a first-round pick and a top 100 pick to go along with it. So quick math, boom, boom, boom. First and let's say a third to get A.J. Brown. Caroline, if I'm a team needy at wide receiver picking near the bottom of the first round, why in the hell would I not pay that? If I feel like I'm in a Super Bowl window and I'm New England or Buffalo and I'm like, I could really use a big wide receiver to come in, like first and the third, fine, take these picks.
Yes and no, I agree and disagree. Because if you're New England and you're picking 31st in the draft, if you're Buffalo and you're picking 26th in the draft, you got two very wide receiver needy teams. And if you would be taking at 26 or 31, ideally a wide receiver that you would hope that could give you half as much production that A.J. Brown could give you. So I do understand that of, look, why swing for a receiver that we hope is going to pan out when we could just trade that pick and get a receiver that we know is going to pan out, especially if you're New England. A.J. Brown and Mike Vrabel have a very close relationship. When A.J. Brown was traded out of Tennessee, Mike Vrabel was kind of shook up about it. Like, Mike Vrabel was not in favor of that trade from all reporting that was going on within the Tennessee Titans building. So it makes sense, right? That you have that relationship there, that you know what kind of production that you're going to get, especially for two teams that are in windows right now immediately. You can't worry about what year 3 of a new A.J. Brown deal looks like. You have to worry about 2026, especially if you're Buffalo. Worry about right now. Worry about 2030 and 2030. But my only caveat with that is the asking price is actually higher than what the Eagles gave up to acquire A.J. Brown, 4 years ago? The Eagles traded the 18th overall pick, so a first, and the 101st overall pick. So if they're asking for a first-round pick and a top 100 pick, the price has actually gone up for A.J. Brown when he has more mileage and more years on him, and he's coming off of a not very good year where he was a much bigger story off the field and not in a good way than he was on the field. So I understand the Eagles are going to set the asking price incredibly high. I get that. That's good business by the Eagles. You don't give up A.J. Brown for nothing. But also, I would maybe caution that asking price, understanding that the price doesn't necessarily go up for an aging player at 28 years old coming off of a not very great year.
Look, you're right. All of that is true. I think right now they're dangling him because they know there are teams that do believe that they're in a Super Bowl window. I would also add teams that are in a we need to figure out what we have at the quarterback position window because to your point earlier, we all agree that having a great running game is your best friend for a young quarterback. But I also think one of the keys to developing a young quarterback, when you believe you got the right guy in the building, you then have an obligation to surround that guy with as much talent to find out if he is him or not. I'm just looking at the bottom of the draft right now when you're talking about teams picking near the end of the first round. Buffalo at 26, you've mentioned New England at 31, obviously, but a team like Denver, maybe Denver wants to put more weapons in and around their quarterback situation. Houston, who we're going to talk about in just a second. There are other teams picking at the bottom of the first round that are trying to make sure they got their guy and they can take a drastic leap forward. And because of that, I think right now what you see is high value because they are posturing to try and create some sort of a bidding war for A.J. Brown. At the end of the day, we do need to remember, though, there's a big difference between what teams are asking and what they're getting, and there's a big difference between asking right now and actually getting anything in return. That being said, we have gotten one trade already. We got a big one as David Montgomery no longer a Detroit Lion. What does it mean for the Houston Texans and maybe the hidden message they're sending us? We'll tell you about it next.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Nyla Inoue.
Yeah, that's the one, huh?
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
Is the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
And Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is like, he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I would say Jaden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
The Texans are acquiring running back David Montgomery from the Lions. Per multiple reports, the Texans receive David Montgomery. The Lions get a 4th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, and offensive lineman Juice Scruggs, which is, by the way, one of the best names you could ever ask for an offensive lineman. All right, Caroline. So, I mean, when you're named Juice Scruggs, you know you're going to be a badass athlete. That's just the way it goes. So let's take a look at this because when you are the Houston Texans, we've been looking at it saying, what are they going to do? The Texans are in some ways a very good team and in some ways a very stuck team. So what did this trade say to you when you saw this went down?
That Woody Marks isn't going to cut it. That they need to do more to protect CJ Stroud. And the conversation that we just had about potentially adding Kenneth Walker to the New York Giants, that's going to be a young quarterback's best friend. Clearly, CJ Stroud is struggling. Clearly, there's a disconnect with CJ Stroud. I know we so badly want to hold on to the CJ Stroud of his rookie year, and I do think that quarterback is in there somewhere. But over the past couple of years, we have had a lackluster at best version of CJ Stroud. That if watching him throw 4 interceptions against the Patriots wasn't enough to prove to you that somebody needs to help CJ Stroud, we need to do something. We need to put someone or something around CJ Stroud to help him. I think what adding David Montgomery does is you're adding a veteran presence. You're adding a pass-blocking veteran presence as well, because clearly the protection was an issue for the Houston Texans last year. And you're adding a bruising, physical, reliable running back. Now, is David Montgomery going to revolutionize the Texans' run game? No, I don't think so. Is David Montgomery going to be their go-to back for the next 6 years? No, that's not what David Montgomery is going to offer. But what he does add is a reliable presence that CJ Stroud can hand the ball off to, and he can say, CJ, I got you. So CJ Stroud doesn't feel like he has to continuously carry a brunt of the load. I did hear a lot of criticism about the trade package. It was a 4th-round pick, a 7th-round pick, and Juice Scruggs. Coolest name ever. I don't mind it. I really don't mind it. I heard so many Twitter GMs yesterday that up in arms about the asking price. But I look at it and I say, because I've heard so many people say, well, you can find a running back, a cheaper, younger running back in the 4th round. I hear you on that. Yes, you can. That's what the Texans tried to do with Woody Marks. Clearly that didn't work out. So I could see the justification, and didn't work out with an asterisk. Like, Woody Marks is fine, but he is what he is. He's not going to be your number one go-to back who's able to pass block on any given down. So, what you're doing in trading a 4th-round pick is saying, we're not going to continue to go to the well and draft 4th-round running backs when they don't pan out to the level that we expect them to. We're going to trade a 4th-round pick and get, as close to a sure thing as possible. We know what we're signing up for with David Montgomery, so the trade package doesn't bother me. And I will say, I looked up, because I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on Houston Texans guards. Juice Scruggs got a 45 overall grade from Pro Football Focus, which graded out as 78th of 81 guards in the NFL this past season. So adding Juice Scruggs into the mix, I don't think you're losing too much. I think the Texans will be okay moving on from Juice Scruggs.
Look, this move, I think, was great for the Texans, and an unfortunate but necessary move from the Lions' standpoint. This is the Lions doing the right thing by a player, because if you're David Montgomery, you certainly believe you're capable of more. Just take a look at the number of carries he got. Last year, he had 158 carries. That's a very arbitrary number to throw out, but I'll tell you that ranks 31st in the NFL. So you're talking about somebody that believes he can be the workhorse. He can be the featured star back. But he was 31st in the league in carries at 158. For point of reference, that's less carries than Woody Marks, who you mentioned earlier, got. That's 40 less carries than Woody Marks got last year for the Texans, while he averages a full yard per carry more than Woody Marks does. So you're talking about somebody whose production is not dipped, but his total opportunity to produce has. So if you're Montgomery, this is frustrating because you understand that you're part of a great team and you understand you're part of a great function in the backfield, but you also understand that you're essentially Robin. No matter how well you run the football, you are Robin in this situation. So if you're David Montgomery, you want to go somewhere where you can be Batman. You can really show what you're fully capable of. And even though he's 29 years old, again, when you look at his carries have drastically dipped each of the last 3 years, while his yards per carry has stayed on track. In fact, if you look at the last 3 years, just look at his touchdowns over the last 3 years, and you'll also see he's got, 33 touchdowns over the last 3 years running the football. He's still an incredibly effective runner at 29 years old. His body is actually going to be less beat up than many other running backs because he has been in a split carry backfield. He gets the opportunity to come in and immediately take a large portion of this workload off. And I hear everybody when they say, well, you could just get a running back in the 4th or 5th round. That's great until you actually try that, and it doesn't work. When you watch your team with a terrible running back, you're reminded that we often say, oh, you can find a running back anywhere, until you wake up one day and you don't have one. So I think the Texans are making a clear statement here that they want to run the football better because they don't want to put as much on C.J. Stroud. And if they're not going to put as much on C.J. Stroud, they have to have a better running option. This is a home run to me for the Houston Texans in every possible way. Also, a home run for fantasy football. Like, look, we're not a fantasy heavy show here, but Yahoo is a fantasy heavy network. We know that. We love all of you guys that choose to play fantasy football with Yahoo Sports all the time. Gibbs now becomes like the guy, right? Like he's 101 in this thing. He's like, he is the beast. You go out, you take him first over. I do believe the Lions will bring in another Robin, but good Lord, like just when you thought Batman couldn't get any cooler, I think Gibbs just, this only puts more opportunity on his plate.
Is he going to get 30 touches a game?
He could.
Like without splitting the carries with David Montgomery, like he might get the ball a ridiculous college number of times. So yeah, if you're picking first in your fantasy draft, Jahmyr Gibbs seems like an incredibly scary pick. I do wonder what the effect of that will be. You know, they've been Sonic and Knuckles for Jahmyr Gibbs' entire career. David Montgomery has been in Detroit ever since Jahmyr Gibbs got drafted just a couple of years ago. So I'm with you. I do think that the Lions go out and get some sort of number 2, a Robin to Jahmyr Gibbs' Batman. But I wonder how many veteran running backs across the NFL are going to sign up for that. Sign up for less money, sign up for less touches, sign up to be the number 2. Maybe there are some guys that are aging in their career and say, cool, I'll sign up for that for a team that's ready to win, or at least constructed to win right now. But I do wonder how that'll affect Jahmyr Gibbs when he is the number 1 target, when he becomes even more so a massive, circle for defensive coordinators out there. They're going to say, we are not going to let number 0 stop us. Although that's been the mentality ever since he's been in Detroit and proven himself as one of the best running backs in the National Football League. When David Montgomery isn't there to take away attention from opposing defenses, how does that impact Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah, that's a really interesting portion of this because on the one hand, I'm sitting here saying they're just going to pick up another running back. But when you look at the list of free agent running backs that are out there this year, you've got like a Travis Etienne. Well, that's not the David Montgomery type, right? Breece Hall, who I don't think is going to get away from the Jets, is not David Montgomery type. Kenneth Walker, the
and
third,
neither
that
of
we
which
love on
would
this
sign
show.
up for this role.
Right, 100%. So, like, and then you got to wonder, like, Rico Dowdle, who, we talked a lot about this season, is a free agent. Is Rico Dowdle going to want to take this one opportunity? He finally has the opportunity to go out and really cement himself after a stronger season than most people anticipated he would have. Does he want to play a secondary role to Jahmyr Gibbs? You're right. Like, the more I think about the Robin element to this, not only the fact that they need a Robin in carries, but also they want a bruising back that can just sort of fall forward and do physical damage. They want the knuckles to the thunder, or whatever that was. They want the opposite side of this. I'm not sure you can find that in free agent. Thank you for finding that for us, guys. That's well done by you.
Aww.
I'm not sure. You might have to look in the draft. This might end up being one of those moments where you're looking for a bruising back in mid-rounds of the draft coming up in April, and you're hoping you can get a body in that way that can eat up some carries and just do some damage that way.
A chess piece is kind of what you're looking for. And I look, this
Yeah.
was a move that was inevitable. This was a move that the writing was on the wall. We all knew this past offseason the Lions were likely going to have to do something with David Montgomery just to free up some money there. But I do think that's going to take a hit. And I view Jahmyr Gibbs as one of the ultimate chess pieces in the National Football League. Like, he's not just a running back. His impact is offensive weapon. So I'm not going to doubt the ability of Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not going to say all of a sudden this Lions offense is lackluster and helpless and Jahmyr Gibbs is nothing without David Montgomery. Of course not. Because this is the Lions way of saying, and the Lions move of, look, Jahmyr Gibbs is our guy, our 1A, our go-to guy. We are willing to put more on his shoulders and more on his plate because we feel confident in his ability to carry the brunt of that load. And who am I to doubt that based off of what we've seen so far in Jahmyr Gibbs' NFL career? But it's not a position that can go unaddressed. And who fills that role? How expensive is it? What do you have to give up in order to get that guy? Is there a guy in this upcoming draft that they feel like can fill that role?
Yeah, this is going to be a complicated offseason for the Lions. Right now, according to Over the Cap, they're $6.5 million over the cap. Now, again, plenty of time for things to get reworked. They can always keep pushing money around. It's amazing how they find ways to do that. But when you have a team that you've drafted so well and you got to start paying guys, again, you're looking at guys like, Goff has a almost $70 million cap hit this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a $33 million cap hit. Penei Sewell has a $28 million cap hit. I'm not saying this as obstructions for them. It's more a reminder that when you are a good team that has suddenly become a very good team, one of the things you have to do is figure out who you're paying, how you're paying, and I'm not sure you were going to have the luxury, as long as you wanted to have the luxury, of multiple running backs, right? Like, this was a luxury for this team. Now, again, Caroline, I want to stress, part of the way that the Lions got great is they drafted efficiently. They've drafted really well for a lot of years to get to where they are. Mm-hmm. They're going to trust their draft process, but you run out. As you start paying guys, this is a reminder to everybody that you pay graduating classes, boy, you better be drafting right underneath those the whole way, because you have one or two bad drafts in a row, and all of a sudden you're right back to where you were. So I think this was a necessary move that honestly puts more pressure on top of all of it still for the Lions to continue to perform at a high level in the draft.
And I think that they felt that pressure regardless, especially feeling the pressure of that coming off of a season where they missed the postseason after the magical ride and run that was the 2024 season. But going back to the Texans side of things, this is a crucial and critical offseason for Houston. At some point, they're going to have to make their minds up about investing in CJ Stroud long term. What have we seen from CJ Stroud to give us clarity, hope, optimism that he's worth investing into? I hear Nick Caserio, I hear him saying that it would be foolish to move on from CJ Stroud this offseason. And I get that, because who else would be your quarterback? Look, if you move on from CJ Stroud, who's quarterbacking for the Houston Texans in 2026? However, I don't think it's foolish to have the idea that CJ Stroud might not be Houston's solution long term. Not after you throw 4 picks in a playoff game with a Super Bowl caliber defense. This is a what have you done for me lately league. And what CJ Stroud has done lately isn't the electric rookie year that we saw that, earned him Offensive Rookie of the Year honors, could have been in contention for league MVP, one of the greatest rookie seasons we've seen of all time. No. That was 2 years ago. What CJ Stroud has done lately is play double agent against the New England Patriots in the divisional round of the postseason. So the Texans have to figure out soon what they want to do long-term and in the future at the quarterback position. So that's what this offseason has to be, putting every single possible resource into making CJ Stroud better, making him feel more comfortable, creating the most perfect and healthy ecosystem for CJ Stroud so they can have clarity moving forward of if he's their guy or not for the long term. You're not a David Montgomery away from making CJ Stroud into, from what he was against the Patriots into what he was in his rookie season. This is not the only move that the Texans need to make or have to make this offseason. They have to invest in the offensive line. They have to get better. They have to protect CJ Stroud more. They have to give him more weapons. Because while I do think CJ Stroud was so bad this past season that at times, especially against the Patriots, that it goes far beyond just you need to put better pieces around him. At some point, CJ Stroud himself just has to be better. But I don't think they're just David Montgomery away from CJ Stroud looking like the version that he was in year one.
Complications coming for the Texans as they have fifth-year options decisions to make on Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud. Plenty to keep you updated on there, but in the meantime, coming up next, what's the latest on the WNBA Lockout? Annie Costabile joins us. We'll get her thoughts on everything that's happening for the W right now.
Peterson looked like the clear-cut number one pick in the first half of that game. He looked like the clear-cut number one pick. The fluidity on the floor, the ease in which he moved off ball defensively, creating havoc. He looked majestic.
Sometimes it just comes down to as simple as this dude moves the way basketball players are born to move. Was Kevin Durant the last college scorer that made it look as effortless?
Did you go to the casino after the fight?
Hell yeah.
How'd you do?
We're up.
Up?
We're up.
Well
Yep,
done.
we're up.
Were you just walking around there after the fight and people recognizing you? Weren't you the guy that was just on the UFC?
Yeah, that's where I get recognized the most.
Really?
The other
say?
gambling degens, everyone recognizes me there. Anywhere else I go, no one knows me. But if I go there, everyone points me out.
The 72 Dolphins is infamously the no-name defense. This one's the too-many-name defense.
Too many names,
Too many names.
Defenses were ahead of offenses this season for a lot of it. The best teams in the NFL had the best defenses. We're sitting here talking about this defense and how good it was and how hard it is to isolate one player. And yeah, that's the sport of football. It's a team sport. It's hard to isolate individual players, and Seattle really exemplified that all year.
We're ranking the actual threats from the absolute frauds.
Your contenders, who do you got?
My contenders. So I have Sporting, and I say that because they have had a strong top 8 finish over some other heavyweight teams. Mm-hmm. They're actually very, very hard to break down as a squad, and they're very, very strong in transition.
And they got a guy named Luis Suarez, which is fun. Just
guard your ears.
Annie Costabile tweets out, Breanna Stewart tells the media at Unrivaled Shoot-Around that the WNBA submitted a counter-proposal last night. Annie joins us now. She covers women's sports for Front Office Sports. Annie, we're a week away, and I can't believe we're already a week away from the WNBA March 10th deadline to come to an agreement with the players without a delay in the season. So when we hear there's counter-proposal exchanges, is that a good sign in your mind that we're getting closer to at least a meeting?
Yeah, I think the pace at which the two sides are exchanging counter proposals definitely indicates, the urgency that they both have talked about lacking this entire time. At one point, it was the union, making claims about the league lacking urgency. The league has said the same about the union. And now we're seeing that neither side is lacking urgency. They're both exchanging counter proposals within days of each other. And again, that's because, a delay to the season is a very real thing if this is not done by March 10th.
And just following all of the CBA negotiations, going all the way back to September and October, it feels like everyone is on one side or another. That either, the league needs to bend the knee, the players need to bend the knee, you need to compromise, you need to compromise. Where I think the reality is everybody's going to have to compromise on something. That's just what a negotiation is. But from everything that you know about the situation and everyone that you have talked to, if we do miss games, if there is not an agreement by March 10th and the season is either shortened or, let's just say, worst case scenario, missed entirely, who do you think is to blame?
That's a really good question, and obviously one that I think would evoke a lot of emotion from a lot of fans when they hear it, depending on what I'm about to say. And I may piss people off by kind of towing the line here or staying in the middle here, but I think there's no way to adequately place blame fully on either side. I think when you look at, as a whole, the league's response throughout the entire negotiating period, so going back to October or the fall when the players opted out in 2024, you certainly can, if you're the union, be bothered by the pace at which the league responded throughout this entire process, all the way up until the beginning of the year, when they wasted 6 weeks letting a proposal sit on the table that they did not respond to. So some, in that sense, would say, well, the league would be at fault here. And then others would look at, the way that the union has handled some of its communication around the proposal, some or around what it's seeking in the proposal, some of the pushback, and say, well, they've gone about this the wrong way in terms of their communication style and the way they've approached these negotiations. So I think depending on who you're talking to, you could place blame on either side. And for me, I do think the league's slow response to start the year definitely warrants criticism, valid criticism, and questioning in terms of, you have 2 expansion drafts to complete, free agency to complete, a regular collegiate draft to complete. And even if you didn't think the proposal on the table was valid, to just not respond at all is definitely worth criticizing, especially in this moment as we're coming up on this deadline. But as a whole, who would be at fault? I think that's a tough one to fairly answer.
So we all know revenue sharing is like the number one thing that seems to be holding this up. Do you have a sense of where we are? How far apart is everybody on that right now?
Yeah, I think what's the biggest hang up in this revenue sharing conversation is the system with which both sides are proposing revenue to be shared and how that impacts the percentage of revenue that's being shared. The union is seeking gross revenue, which obviously is the revenue before any deductions are taken. The league is proposing a share of net revenue after certain deductions are taken off the top. And that percentage they're saying is 70% of net revenue. Okay. But when you look further at that, what multiple sources have consistently said is that percentage does not equate to more than 15% of total league revenue before deductions are made over the course of this deal that's on the table. And so it's not necessarily that net revenue would be a problem if that percentage was larger than, again, what's on the table, which is less than 15%. So if that percentage can get closer to what the union is seeking, which they're now seeking 26%, then that could close the gap. Now, how much the league is willing to come up from where it's at, again, that below 15% of total league revenue remains to be seen. But I think that's the biggest sticking point when it comes to revenue share right now.
It's definitely the biggest sticking point, the financials, the rev share of it all. But we've also heard from a lot of your reporting that there are some other things that the league has thrown out there, like housing, for example, has been one thing that's been negotiated back and forth a lot. So aside from rev share, which of course is 1A of what is being negotiated, what are some other things that might be holding up negotiations or being negotiated?
Obviously the salary cap, they both are still discussing where that salary cap will be at. The league just proposed 5.75 million. The union is seeking just below 9.5 million. You obviously see a huge gap there. And then again, it really is housing. The league has historically always provided housing to players. And what we know is the WNBA is a very unique league in the sense of its window that it plays. And so finding housing for players in this shortened window, in addition to, players that would potentially be in markets like New York, Chicago, San Francisco. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but seeking a lease in a market where you are only available to sign potentially a 6-month lease in New York, like that's not an easy scenario. And so I think that's why there's such an emphasis on, ensuring that housing is provided at least for a period of time. Now whether this gets phased out for certain players down the road, I think that's something that we could potentially see happen. But in 2026, I think it's really important for the union that team provided housing remains on the table. And then I think another sticking point that will be interesting as this deal gets finalized. We know retirement benefits are important. But another really interesting point in all of this is the roster construction aspect. What we know right now is that in the league's proposal, 20% of the salary cap will go to the Supermax contract. Roughly 17% will go to the standard max. About 9% is going to go to rookies like Caitlin Clark, who just popped on screen. So that is the middle tier is really getting squeezed here. And I think there's a lot of questions about how roster construction is going to work under this proposal. And what I also know is that similar to the league's proposal, which again has that 20% and 17% going to the max, the super max and the standard max, the union wants to see a super max at $1 million as well. And the emphasis on that being a priority brings into question how the rest of the rosters is going to shake out.
Annie, we just had Caitlin on the screen. I want to be fair, but also real for a second, right? Like there is one player in the W that tomorrow could call up Saturday Night Live and host it. There's one player in the W that has that level of platform that everybody pays attention to. Knowing that, while I'm not saying it's her job to come in and fix a league and fix a problem here, we haven't heard a lot from her. She hasn't really used her platform or her voice in a strong way in this process. How much obligation should Caitlin feel at this point from her peers and from her league to stand up and try and help move this thing forward?
I certainly don't want to speak for Caitlin by any means, but what I've gathered, having covered Caitlin for years now, even going back to Iowa, covering some of her tournament games at Iowa, I think she's always been a very calculated person. And in the current stage of her schedule, she's not playing anywhere right now. So her media obligations are very limited. So when you look at these other players who are being more vocal, it's not necessarily because they're going out of their way to speak to the media. They are obligated to in different settings, whether it be Unrivaled, Athletes Unlimited. Now, Neko Gumike, the president of the WNBPA, has certainly made herself available. Different members of the executive committee have certainly made themselves available. But when it comes to other players who are not necessarily in union leadership, that access has been limited. And so I get what you're saying in the sense of like Caitlin is the face of the league. She has power. When she speaks, people listen. That's very valid, but she's also a very calculated person when she does speak. And I think the people leading these negotiations are not necessarily asking that of her. And so if you're Caitlin, you know, is it your job to supersede player leadership? I don't think that is a tactic that seems like one Caitlin would ever take on. Now, she will be at USA Basketball this weekend. A lot of us will be there. So that will certainly be a moment that we're going to hear from her regarding CBA negotiations. We heard from her during USA Camp in North Carolina. But as far as you know, her putting herself in a position that isn't required to speak up, I just don't know. Yeah, that seems like something Caitlin has ever really taken on.
I think also important to remember, Caitlin's been in the league for 2 years. So there's a lot of inner workings and minutia about the league that she might just not be familiar with because she hasn't been in the league very long. But Annie,
you also got to think about, like, if we're in a negotiation, right? And you're the newcomer, you're like the young one who is still learning. Like, are you going to overstep or step in front of, you know, the stalwart, the veteran who's, like, you know, been at this for years? I think it's not unlike, you know, regular human nature, and maybe that sometimes we have to take a step back, I think, and think of it in those terms. And yes, while she has this star power, she is, to your point, only in year 2. And so I think the trust in union leadership is something that maybe people don't want to overstep.
Totally fair. Totally fair. But we've heard, speaking of that leadership from the league, Napheesa Collier and Brianna Stewart are both VPs of the WNBPA. They're also co-founders of Unrivaled, an off-season league that you cover as well. What's the concern level that there might be a conflict of interest between two people who are financially invested in an off-season league, but also speaking on behalf of the WNBA?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think it's a very fair talking point. I think it's something we need to continue to kind of harp on. The reason at this stage I don't think it's fair to call it a conflict of interest is because when the league was founded, it was founded on the belief and the understanding that players could play elsewhere, that they could earn elsewhere. The league literally said, because there was a competing league that had higher salaries at the time and didn't want its players playing elsewhere. The WNBA was founded and allowed players to earn elsewhere. And so up until this point, we've seen rules put in place, whether it's prioritization, which is the main rule put in place to, again, force players to focus on the WNBA, to be back in market by the time training camp starts, et cetera, that is starting to indicate where the footprint is going, and that the league could one day be in a situation where it demands exclusivity, However, it's not there yet. And so for Brianna Stewart and Napheesa Collier and honestly other players who are have stakes as players in these other leagues, Project B as well, it needs to continue to come up, but the WNBA needs to put it without exclusivity. It's hard for the WNBA to walk back where it's been historically in terms of that allowance of players to play elsewhere. Now, the next CBA, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, whatever it is, I think that could be when we are looking at this from a very different perspective in terms of exclusivity and these players being, again, having ownership stakes in these other leagues.
You guys can read her on Front Office Sports. You can follow her on social media at Annie Costabile. Annie, nobody's doing a better job of covering this. We really appreciate your time and your expertise on it. Thank you so much for the insight. Hope you'll come back when this is all settled and then help us break it down from your mindset at that point. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's great stuff from Annie. About a week away on that, so we'll see where it goes. Coming up, Final Four contender or pretender? We'll break it down Jim Carrey style. Coming up next on the show.
You covered Darnold with the Jets. Where are you kind of just feeling about him?
Another game with 3 games in a row, no turnovers for Sam. The sack avoidance snipe from Sam was incredible. The back and forth between Sam and Milton Williams was honestly really impressive for Sam on my part, because I thought that it wasn't his best game of the season, but it was the game he needed to have, which was clean. He won the Super Bowl. He's going to get a contract extension. It's kind of cool to see his redemption story.
What was it like being at MSG? Like in the back, the locker room? Like, could you feel that it was a little different?
It's a total different experience from being there as a spectator to actually being there backstage and all of that stuff. Total different experience. I was so tuned into my fight. I don't even think I was looking at the referee. I'm just there, just kind of just like looking down. I'm listening to what he's saying. At the same time, I'm just thinking about the fight. I'm like, yeah, all right, y'all done? You ready? Right? Yeah. All right, it's time to go.
The Premier League has gotten so successful. Survival has become such a priority. Maybe that doesn't lead to the most like entertaining football match.
The one thing that you want to avoid is having this like runaway first place team by Boxing Day, which happens more often than not. This has been, I would argue, a little bit more exciting this season. The entire mid-table is packed.
Yeah.
So
as an Everton fan, I'm like, yeah, we in the mix.
For Clippers fans, I just feel bad, Tom. I mean, I feel bad. It's always something with the Clippers. It's always something. And then, you know, the year begins and the whole aspiration thing, and then the team sucks. And then they start winning and they make a run and they're in the play-in and the playoffs are ahead. And then this all happens. James Harden does it again. He asks for another trade.
Makeup artist Alexis Stone has gone viral over claiming to have impersonated Jim Carrey at the 2026 César Film Awards. Previously impersonated Glenn Close and others in this process. Not sure. This is the great conspiracy theory. Was it actually Jim Carrey that showed up to the award show? Was it not? His publicist came out, debunked the conspiracy theories. I'm not sure if it was Jim Carrey or not Jim Carrey, or if Jim accepted the award and did not. Like, is he going full weird on this? I don't know. But we figured we'd channel some of the Jim Carrey energy, and we figure out, all right, imposter, disguise, or real. And we'll look at the NCAA tournament with some of the teams that are disguised as Final Four contenders. Maybe they just had too much filler, and they're going to bust your bracket. So let's see if we can unmask some of these teams. I mean, the fillers are just obvious. And decide if they're tournament contenders. Number 15, Purdue. They're 22-7. Lenardi has them as a 3. Caroline Fenton. Are they frauds or are they the real deal?
Frauds, capital F. I think Purdue is the most overrated team in men's college basketball right now. And I said this after they lost to Michigan State, because at that point, Purdue had lost their 4 biggest home games of the season. And we're talking home games. Mackey Arena at Purdue is one of the most underrated venues, I think, in college basketball. It is loud, it is rocking, it is intimidating. And when you host Michigan State at home and you lose, you host Illinois and you lose. Their 4 biggest home games this season all are losses in a place where you should have a massive edge. So I said this before Purdue lost to Ohio State, and I feel even smarter in saying that now after they lost to Ohio State. So look, Purdue, obviously they're not in any sort of concern or in the rarefied air of missing out on the tournament. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, and I'm not saying that Purdue's a bad team. I am just saying that Purdue is not what we are hyping them up to be. That Purdue is overrated. They're getting this level of love that I do not think that they deserve. And back-to-back losses against, frankly, teams that they should be beating is perfect proof of that.
Yeah, they got shellacked by Michigan. They get beat by a Michigan State team that I keep joking on this show can't shoot from the outside, but didn't matter in that game. Michigan State's first to win at Purdue, and and then they just have been beaten over and over and over again. To your point, they're a fine basketball team. They feel to me like they're a Sweet 16 caliber basketball team. But if we start talking about Final Four, if we start talking about championship, no, I love that Scooby-Doo graphic. That is 100% where they are, because not only are they frauds, but they're frauds that you can kind of see coming, and they don't scare anybody. How about this one? Number 7 Houston Cougars, 24-5, would be a 2-season. Are they disguised as a contender or the real deal to you?
No, I think Houston is a contender. And they are coming off of a 3-game losing streak, but those are losses that came in the form of Iowa State, Arizona, and Kansas. Now, look, if you want to be a contender, you got to beat those contenders. Do not get me wrong there. But I don't think that it's an egregious demerit on your resume losing to 3 of the best teams in the country. And right now, if the tournament started today, Houston would be a 2 seed. I don't want to see Houston in my bracket. Like, if you've earned a 1 in a college basketball world that is as crowded at the top as this iteration of college basketball is, you're saying I earned my way into a top 4 ranking, and what do I get? What's my reward? Houston? Yeah, no thank you. So I think Houston is a legitimate contender, Fitzy.
Yeah, Houston's all filler. I was going to go legit on this for a minute, but I just keep thinking about, look, it's not like we've never seen a Houston team struggle in the tournament anyway. It's not like we've never seen a Houston team find a way to drop the ball in the NCAA tournament. We've seen that historically. And I'm just being a little consistent here. Like, when we start talking about the losses that have stacked up, they lose to Kansas ranked, they lose to Arizona ranked, they lose to Iowa State ranked. They lost all 3 of them. They beat Colorado. Congratulations on that. Like, if you keep looking back this year and trying to figure out who they beat and that you're actually like, oh, yeah, that's a really good win. It's fine. Houston's fine. It just feels like Houston's going to go out in the first 2 weekends, and we're all going to be surprised that somehow Houston did. Look at me. I'm ever the naysayer. How about this one? Number 14, Kansas. All right. They got the potential number 1 overall pick in Darren Peterson, 21-8 in the year. This team is all filler to me. Look, I'm jumping on this, Caroline. They are all filler to me because I have no idea. Like, I have no idea at this point if Darren Peterson's actually going to show up. And then if he does show up, is he going to play like he cares? And if he does play like he cares, have they figured out how to run their offense through him or around him? And when that happens, will it actually be more efficient or less efficient? Like, Kansas is that weird thing where they need their best star to come out and play, but they got to play with their best star in that process. None of which we've seen. All filler, all fluff. They are straight Real Housewives. None of it is real.
I mean, just getting clapped by Arizona on the road isn't great. Doesn't make you feel great. I say contender with an asterisk because I think that we could be looking at a serious Jekyll and Hyde situation with Kansas. If Darren Peterson is more of a story on the court than he is off it, they're a contender. They can win a national championship. If Darren Peterson plays consistent minutes and is productive in those consistent minutes, then we're talking about a stacked roster. We're talking about a team that I think can beat anyone in the country. I mean, they beat the then number 1 team in the country in Arizona without Darren Peterson. That's a legitimate national championship contender. But then there's those big questions of, will Darren Peterson be available? Will he be an off-the-court story? Will we be talking about Kansas as more of a circus than they are a legitimate contending basketball team? So I say contender with an asterisk because I just don't know what version of Kansas we're going to get. At their best, they can beat anyone in the country.
Yeah, I just haven't seen enough of their best to believe in their best at all. Kansas, early out, boom. Total pretender. The NCAA tournament right around the corner. Just a reminder, we've got you covered on this show and throughout the Yahoo Sports Network. We'll have tons of tournament coverage for the men's and the women's side. Going to be exciting. Caroline and I will both be big parts of that, so be sure you stick with us. Keep watching. Keep hanging out. In the meantime, coming up next, it's a day, which means Max, wait, is today the trade day or is today the day he's not getting traded? We'll break it all down. Q Meyer's going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on the ever-revolving trade rumors.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Nyla Inoue.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
and Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is like, he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I'd say Jayden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
I swear to God, if you were taking a shot every time you heard this, you've had a very long offseason. The Raiders could trade defensive end Maxx Crosby as early as this week. That per Albert Breer. Several teams keeping tabs on his availability, including the Cowboys, Eagles, and Patriots. To help us break all of it down now, Q Myers, host on Raider Nation Radio, Locked On Raiders podcast. Your boy Q is where you find him. You can also listen to him on Game Night on ESPN Radio. Q, I don't know, man. Like, every time I think I'll be honest, and we've talked about this, but Caroline was sitting right next to me when Jay Glazer on our show said Maxx Crosby's done as a Raider, and I was stunned. I had no idea. Now I feel like every 2 days I hear somebody say he's getting traded. He's not getting traded. What do you think? What's going to happen to Maxx?
Well, first of all, I think it's your guys' fault that this whole firestorm's going on.
That's fair.
That happened on Radio Row. There's ahead of Super Bowl 60. So, yeah, you guys got this whole bad boy started. But honestly, Jason, I've been that guy that's just been kind of waiting and seeing how it all plays out. I've been very adamant that I don't think he's going anywhere for the longest. But you know how this thing plays out, man. The more that you continue to hear more smoke behind everything, it feels like that there's got to be eventual fire somewhere, right? I mean, to this moment, and I don't know, maybe there's been an update. I have not heard the Raiders come out and flat say, we aren't trading Maxx Crosby. And I haven't heard Maxx Crosby come out and flat say, I'm not going anywhere. So until I hear one of the two sides or both say that, I feel like that there's always going to be a situation and a possibility. And with the new league year right around the corner, it would make sense for a team or multiple teams to try to make a move.
So let's live in a world, because we do not live in a world of certainty. We live in a world of rumors and gossip, and we live for it in the NFL. But let's live in a world where Maxx Crosby is not a Raider. What is a trade package that makes sense? And what's a landing spot that would make sense for Maxx Crosby?
I mean, I think anywhere in the NFC would make a lot of sense. I mean, you ideally don't want to put them in the same conference, but I mean, when you're a team like the Raiders, you have to go for the best offer if, in fact, you do feel like, okay, we're going to make that move. I think it starts with a couple ones. I know that the Micah Parsons trade has been the kind of the example that everyone's been given, 2 ones and an impact player. I don't know if Maxx Crosby at 29 gets that, but I'm not just letting him go like I'm going to the dollar store, right? I'm not trying to tell him that it's a special on aisle 5 and Maxx Crosby's available. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to allow not only an impact player on the field, but also a big-time leader of your organization, a leader in the locker room, a guy who's there at 4 a.m., first guy in, last guy out. I mean, I know that sounds cliche, but that's who that dude is. If you're going to be willing to let him go for the sake of you're trying to rebuild this team and maybe your timelines don't match up and he wants to win, that's fine, right? Okay, I can get over it at some point moving on from him, but it has to be very beneficial to the team. So I would say it's got to be at least 2 ones, and it's got to be a team that's a contender, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, I've heard people float the Jets. I was like, well, what kind of sense does that make? they're bad, if not worse than the Raiders, right? They're in a worse position than the Raiders. Why would he want to go from that to that? I mean, so I'm looking at a team like the Cowboys make sense. They have the 2-1s this year. I don't think they'd get both, but number 12 doesn't look too bad, right? I'm looking at teams like the Bears. That could make sense. You know, a team like the Bills, that makes sense. Really, I mean, any team that is a contender. I've seen the Seahawks floated out there, but I mean, that's pick 32. That might as well be the first pick in round 1 or round 2. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those, you know, pick your poison. But I do think that at the end of the day, if in fact he's not a Raider, it has to be super beneficial to the team.
Q, you're around the organization. You've been around Mark Davis for a long time. I keep wondering, Mark Davis seems to like being liked. He already traded Khalil Mack. How hard is it? Like, in my mind, if I'm Mark Davis and I've already just gone through a generation of fans absolutely destroying me for trading a Hall of Fame edge rusher, how hard is it for me to turn around, even if everybody tells me it makes sense, and then trade what could end up being a future Hall of Fame edge rusher? That'd be twice.
Very hard. Yeah, no, very hard. And it's so funny because that scenario and that situation that happened with Khalil Mack keeps popping up. And I mean, Jason, you know, I've been rocking with the Raiders for a long time. I still remember the moment that I found out that Khalil was on his way to the Bears. And I remember the devastation that I felt, right? The how in the world can the Raiders allow this to happen? And so all of a sudden, if it happens again, you know what I mean? It's like one of those just can't have nice things. So I think that Mark would be really hurt if you know, Maxx was traded. Not to mention him and Maxx have a really good relationship, right? And so that's kind of where I've been on the side of I don't think he's going anywhere. He's so loyal to this team, as you know, so loyal, right? And I know that he wants to win in Vegas. I know in his heart he wants to win, and I doubt that he really truly wants to go anywhere. But I also understand that he probably is looking at the timeline of, hey, man, John Spytek's saying that we're not going to win anytime soon. This isn't going to be a quick turnaround like the Patriots or, you know, the Jaguars or the Bears. This is going to be, you know, a slow build, but a correct build. And so does that match up with Maxx and his desires to win? I don't know. And that's why those conversations have to be had in that building.
It's been a slow build, that's for sure. It's been about a 25-year-long rebuild. It's been slow, that's for sure. Low and slow, no doubt.
It's like making a brisket, right? It's like you're going to cook a brisket, right? Low and slow.
Can't microwave a brisket. And you know what? The wait is worth it. 20 years is a long wait. But,
all right. We got it.
Sure is going to be sweet. You bring up John Spytek. We know that Tom Brady's in the building. We've heard that he's going to play a larger role in, you know, roster construction and player evaluation. What's your trust level in the organization, in the front office, to get all of this right?
It's actually higher than it probably should be, right? And I don't know if that's just because it sounds good and I'm waiting for it to actually look good and be good, but it just right now it just seems like, as opposed to last year, John Spytek really has a plan, and he really has his hands in the mix, as opposed to kind of being Pete Carroll's right-hand man. And that's not a shot at Pete Carroll. He just has a resume that says, I know what I'm doing. I've been here, done that. You know, get out of my way, young kid. Let me handle this. And so now with Clint Kubiak in there, it feels like, and this is just from being around them a little bit, feels like there's synergy. It feels like there's all on the same page. It feels like their timelines match up, as opposed to Pete Carroll wanting to win 10 games right away and John Spytek saying, this roster's not really built for 10 wins right away. You know, when you don't see young guys playing right away, you don't see them playing until week 9, 10, 11, you're going to see young guys playing early and often in 2026, I do believe. So it feels like everyone's on the same page, which is a good step in the right direction. Now, the big thing is you have 10 picks, so you have to hit on the majority of them. Obviously, we know the first round pick is going to be the quarterback. That's an opportunity the Raiders haven't had. And I think Fernando Mendoza, just a side note, will be the best quarterback the Raiders have had since 2016 Derek Carr. That's just me. That's what I've been saying. And Derek Carr in 2016 was really stinking good. We all know that. So I think that this is the next opportunity the Raiders have. Clint Kubiak is a really good play caller. Will he be a really good head coach? We'll find out, right? But, I mean, you have steps in the right direction. You know, you've got the play caller. You've got to have protection up front. You've got to have some playmakers. But outside of that, I think that the Raiders have an opportunity. They've got plenty of salary cap space. So, again, right decisions have to be made, and we said that before. But if they do hit on those right decisions, this team can get things turned around.
Q, it is interesting, though. One of the decisions that they've already made is that they're switching to a 3-4 defense under Rob Leonard, the new defensive coordinator. How's that work for Maxx, and what does that mean for the way that they're going to structure the additions they're going to have to make on this roster?
Well, I mean, it's really good linebacking draft. The linebackers, and if you look at the linebackers currently on the roster, the majority of them are free agents, right? From E-Rob to Jabal Adams to Devin White, those are all free agents. So I think that you're going to see, again, going back to this roster turnaround, a complete overhaul of this roster. And I think there's multiple linebackers, and we saw that they ran one of the fastest 40s that we've ever seen. I mean, these guys can move. These linebackers are getting bigger, faster, stronger. All these players are. We just saw them at the scouting combine. So I think you're going to see a new plethora of linebackers come into the roster. I think that Maxx Crosby, you decide what you're going to do with him. To me, he's always a guy with his hand in the dirt. So, that's obviously a decision that you have to make. I don't really want to see Maxx Crosby standing up. But then again, you could look at TJ Watt in Pittsburgh and say, okay, well, if he can be similar and replicate what TJ does, that's not a bad thing. So I think that Robbie Leonard understands how to use these guys. Him and Maxx are really close. So I don't think that he would have a defense where Maxx is not going to fit. I'm looking forward to seeing a big nose tackle, a big block eater, and allow these linebackers to come downhill and make tackles. So I'm excited for Robbie Leonard. Jayson, being around the team, he's a guy that's been well respected for a very long time. And for him to get this opportunity, he's learned under Mike McDonald. He's learned under Brian Flores. He's learned under Patrick Graham. Now he's got the opportunity to put his own thumbprint on the organization. I'm excited to see what Robbie Leonard and this 3-4 defense is going to look like.
I do want to look at the other side of the ball, though, because I absolutely loved the Clint Kubiak hire. I think he's an offensive genius. He's got some pieces to work with. Brock Bowers, when they draft Fernando Mendoza, and then Ashton Genty as well. And Clint Kubiak has come out and said that we want this to be a running back by committee. We want to get a wingman for Ashton Genty. What are some names that make sense, in your opinion, to kind of be that 1-2 punch with Ashton Genty?
Well, I think even Raheem Mostert, and I know he's a free agent, I think that he would make sense, right? He didn't get a whole lot of run last year, and when he ran hard, right, and ran with a purpose. I think that he would be a good veteran in there, a good, wingman to say to Ashton Genty. I also think that there's a couple running backs that you can go look at and bring in from – the draft that you can get later in the draft. You don't have to get a guy that's, a super stud. It's funny, I saw that David Montgomery trade, and I was like, wow, David Montgomery and Ashton Genty would have been crazy. But Montgomery wants to be a lead back, and obviously Ashton Genty is going to be that guy. So you just have to find a complement. The other thing with this, and I asked Clint Kubiak about this at the scouting combine, everywhere he's gone, he's had a real fullback with him. And so I asked him, how important is it going to be? And he lit up. He doesn't get too fired up about too much, but he lit up. His face got a big smile on his face that, the fullback's going to be essential. So there's, a few fullbacks that are in the draft that are available. The one from Michigan, he was the guy that the Raiders met with at the combine. So there's a guy there. There's multiple guys across the league, but I look for a fullback to be added to this roster as well, because again, that's been a staple of what Clint Kubiak's been doing.
Kubiak has also kind of made it clear that they don't think the offensive line situation is as desperate as many fans feel like it is. Do you expect the Raiders will go into this offseason with almost $100 million to spend aggressive on the offensive line, or are they just going to see how these guys handle different coaching?
John Spytek said intelligently aggressive is going to be their approach. And so, I do think that they're going to be aggressive. I do think the offensive line needs some work. There are some pieces to work with. But that center position, I think Tyler Linderbaum, as many teams are going to try to focus in on him, including his own team in Baltimore, I think Linderbaum makes all the sense in the world. So if you back up the Brinks truck and bring him in, then you kill the debate right there of JPJ as a center or a guard. You slide him into a guard spot. You have Colton Miller. You decide what you're doing with DJ Glaze. You have Caleb Rogers from a year ago. Where does he slide in? What is Charles Grant? How does he fit in this mix? There's some pieces to work with, but I think that the center has to be so important, and they have to get that figured out. Not to mention, remember, they're moving to a zone blocking scheme now, which is a staple of the Kubiak-Shanahan-style offense. And he told me athletic offensive lineman, intelligent offensive lineman, especially that center, has to be super intelligent to be able to run this scheme. And Rick Dennison comes in as the offensive line coach. He's a guy that is been basically a master of this. Wherever he's gone, he's a 4-time Super Bowl champ winner. So obviously he's got the skins on the wall, but they've got to master this zone blocking scheme. Jason, watching the Raiders, that has never worked for the Raiders. That blocking scheme has never worked for the Raiders. So they've got to get it right. They've got to be able to figure out who their 5 is going to be, get in there and start working, repeat, rinse and repeat, so they can get this thing down so it actually has a chance to work. When it works, it's a great offensive line, blocking scheme. When it doesn't, it looks like the Raiders of old.
Intelligently aggressive. I love that. I'm going to steal that. I do love it. You just have to couch it. Like, look, we're going to be aggressive, but we will be smart with it. Okay. We're not going to get crazy around here. We've got a strategy. Trust us. And Q, I'm always of the belief that bad organizations fail young quarterbacks far more than young quarterbacks fail organizations. In order to have a healthy environment around Fernando Mendoza, whether that's front office, coaching staff, pieces around him on the field, what is the offseason to-do list in order of priority, in your opinion?
It looks like my Christmas list back in the day, right? It looks like what I used to roll out and pass to Mama Q and be like, all right, this is what I'm going to need on that 25th of December, right? This is what I'm going to need. But really, it's going to be a busy offseason. It really is. I mean, this roster, they have 25 free agents, which is a good thing, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about cutting guys. You could just guys that don't fit with what you want to do, just don't re-sign them, right? And so I think that you're going to see this Raiders team look similar to what we saw in Tampa Bay when Tom Brady and company decided that they were done. After they won their championship and they were walking off into the sunset, that roster at Tampa Bay got turned around so much, and it was so young. That's what I think you're going to see with the Raiders this year, to be able to make sure that they work with Fernando Mendoza and not fail him. They've got to have the 3 Ps, and I'll pass this along to you as well. They've got to have the play caller, they've got to have protection, and they've got to have playmakers. They got the play caller in Clint Kubiak. Protection is questionable. They've got to make sure that the protection is there, and the playmakers, they got a couple, but it's not going to hurt to get a couple more. So that's what they have to make sure that they can do to even give Fernando Mendoza an opportunity, because you hit it on the head. Teams fail quarterbacks, especially early on, more than the quarterback fails the organization.
I'm going to add a P on that one, and just patience is the other one. It's a little, patience. It's a little up and down. And, and if in the draft they could go ahead and get, a transformer, we could go straight back to our childhood and enjoy every ounce of that Christmas day. Q, you're always doing great work. Follow him on social media at your boy Q254. Make sure you listen to Locked On Raiders podcast. You can also check him out on Raider Nation Radio and Game Night on ESPN Radio. He's the busiest man in America. Q, love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us, buddy. Appreciate you. Enjoy some. I'm glad we got some non-me Raiders insights on this show.
Hey, no problem. Anytime you call, man, I'm answering that phone. Appreciate y'all having me on.
It's great stuff from
Thank
Q.
you,
Coming
Q.
up next, not great stuff from Golden State. Are the Warriors doing the loud thing super quiet? We'll tell you about it next.
Peterson looked like the clear-cut number 1 pick in the first half of that game. He looked like the clear-cut number 1 pick. The fluidity on the floor, the ease in which he moved off ball defensively, creating havoc. He looked majestic.
Sometimes it just comes down to as simple as this dude moves the way basketball players are born to move. Was Kevin Durant the last college scorer that made it look as effortless?
Did you go to the casino after the fight?
Hell yeah.
How'd you do?
We're up.
Up?
We're up.
Well done.
We're up.
Were you just walking around there after the fight and people recognizing you? Like, weren't you the guy that was just on the UFC?
Yeah, that's where I get recognized the most.
Really?
The other gambling legends, everyone recognizes me there. Anywhere else I go, no one knows me. But if I go there, everyone points me out.
The 72 Dolphins is infamously the no-name defense. This one's the too many name defense.
Too many names,
too many names.
Defenses were ahead of offenses this season for a lot of it. Like the best teams in the NFL had the best defenses. We're sitting here talking about this defense and how good it was and how hard it is to isolate one player. And that's the sport of football. It's a team sport. It's hard to isolate individual players, and Seattle really exemplified that all year.
We're ranking the actual threats from the absolute frauds.
Your contenders, who do you got?
My contenders. So I have Sporting, and I say that because they have had a strong top 8 finish over some other heavyweight teams. They're actually very, very hard to break down as a squad, and they're very, very strong in transition.
And they got a guy named Luis Suarez, which is fun.
Guard your ears.
Steph Curry will be reevaluated again in 10 days, per a source, making progress on that unpredictable right knee issue, as Curry called it, but that'll rule him out at least the next 5 Warriors games. He's missed the last 10. That included a loss to the Clippers last night, 114-101. The Warriors gave up a 17-point lead in this loss. They're not without Steph. They don't have Jimmy Butler. Their newest trade acquisition, Kristaps Porzingis, continues to be in and out of the lineup with a mystery illness. This is just a terrible, terrible stretch for Golden State. But the question is, Caroline, is Golden State quietly tanking, unlucky, or do they just suck?
I think they just suck. Like, I think if we say, like, oh, like, they're sneaky tanking, like, I think we're just giving them too much credit. Like, I think we're giving them too much benefit of the doubt. I don't think that this is the plan for everyone to be hurt or, to have inconsistent presence on the court, to give up 17-point leads. I think they're just bad. And is it crazy to think that this team could just be bad? When like we mentioned with Kristaps Porzingis, he's on the court, he's off the court. Same thing with Steph. He's been banged up, he's not banged up. Same thing with Draymond. I mean, if Draymond's going to be your, if you at least hope that he's going to be your picture of consistency, I think that you're going to be left disappointed. Is it crazy to think that though, with an aging roster, a banged up roster, and a team that didn't look like they really had any sort of direction at the trade deadline? Is it crazy that that team is just straight up bad and will be bad throughout the rest of the season? A team that looked lackluster at the beginning of the season? I don't think it's crazy to think that this team, I know, the Warriors, I know, the Golden State Warriors, we don't want to go there and we don't want to say that they're just a bad team, but I think that they're just bad. I think they're directionless, Fitz. I don't think they have a vision or a direction.
Look, I know that sometimes I'm so logical it frustrates people. I get that. But, this one stacks up really logically to me, Caroline. Steve Kerr told us earlier this year, with everybody on the floor, we're not good enough to compete with OKC. He already told us that. The answers here are in plain sight. When Kerr came out and said, we are not capable of contending with the best of the best, and then on top of that, you factor in the injuries that we're getting. This isn't quiet tanking. This is just a team that sucks. And so, unfortunately, what has happened is we just keep looking at the hope of seeing Steph. And Steph provides such hope to everybody because of the way he plays the game, because everybody seems to love him. And just because, we see the electric shots from the TV broadcast set and you look at it, you're like, God, we love Steph. Yeah, we do love Steph. But Steph and Jimmy together on this roster healthy, we're making this a mid-level West team. So now you lose your best pieces and you suck. This doesn't have to be some great conspiracy theory to trying to tank to me. This is just a poorly constructed roster that is going to be poorly constructed for the foreseeable future. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here, but I don't think there's an easy fix, especially if we remain consistent with what makes the best teams in the West the best teams. What does Golden State have that's going to topple those? I hear this. This is where everybody says it's just a moment. And you know what? This summer, they'll go after Giannis. And if they get Giannis, everything's going to be better. To which, Caroline, I say, okay, add Giannis to this. What are you really doing? Maybe you're adding an aging superstar, and I love Giannis, but you're adding an aging superstar that has put on so much size on his body that his body seems to be breaking down. He can't reliably play as many games as he used to play, and even when he plays his best, his team still gets his ass kicked, as we saw last night. So now you're adding one of the best players in the NBA, but you're adding him to a roster that's already old and top-heavy. So, okay, how's that going to make you better than OKC? Quick answer is, it won't, because OKC is young and deep. They're younger than you are. They're deeper than you are. They're better positioned to handle a 7-game series. So, cool. If you go trade for Giannis, you get relevance, and that's worth something in the NBA, but it ain't going to put more banners in the rafters. That's not going to put suddenly more championship rings on Steph's hands. So all you're doing is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. The fact is the Warriors suck. And the best thing right now is for the Warriors and Steph to just separate. Let Steph go somewhere if he wants to and win, or if he wants to stay there and just play and have fun and be a Golden State Warrior for his whole career, great. But we need to stop talking about Golden State like they're a championship caliber basketball team, because they aren't. They're just a bad basketball team that right now, to your point, is rudderless and doesn't have an easy fix.
Send Steph to Charlotte. Bring him back home. Add Steph to the Hornets. We're going to the finals, baby. Okay, so Giannis in Golden State. I feel two different ways. There's an angel on my shoulder and a devil on my shoulder. The angel on my shoulder is telling me adding Giannis to the Warriors is like when you have a baby to save your marriage. It's like, ooh, I don't think that's addition by subtraction there, or maybe subtraction by addition there. Not really a great foolproof plan. In fact, I think that is it's a plan that is doomed to fail, because the rational side of me says Giannis has been banged up. Giannis is aging. You're going to have to give up the absolute farm in order to acquire Giannis. So, are you really willing to mortgage your future in order to capitalize for the right now? And even the right now would be a question mark. But the devil on my shoulder says Giannis and Steph together in Golden State would be so fun. Would they win a championship? Probably not. Would the Warriors be doomed for the next decade if they decided to trade for Giannis and, push all their chips into the middle for the right now? Probably so. But how fun would that be? I mean, just live in a world where Giannis is healthy, Steph is healthy, where both of these guys play at their absolute peaks for whatever their ceiling is right now. How freaking fun would that be? So if I for the factor of cool, I want it. For Golden State Warriors fans and the next 5 to 10 years of their happiness, if their happiness is in fact invested into the success of their basketball team, I don't love it.
I mean, to your point, I'm looking at Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves. And that was supposed to be a holy trinity that the Lakers thought would make them a championship caliber basketball team. Fun fact, it has not made them a championship caliber basketball team. What has it made them? It's made them an interesting conversation piece. But it's only an interesting conversation piece until it becomes a spectacle. It becomes a spectacle when you're not winning the way you should win with the stars that you have. To me, the inevitability of combining Giannis and Steph, even if you're combining Giannis and Steph with whatever's left to Draymond at this point, who frankly is a better podcast host than a basketball player most nights. When we're talking about what we would see from that team moving forward, it's going to be interesting, but is it going to be interesting for the right reasons? Like, there's a difference between we're interesting because we are constantly a championship contender. That's what Golden State used to be. That's what OKC is now. That's what I think San Antonio is about to be. That's what Denver is at some level. Interesting because they're a championship caliber basketball team. So then we're interested when they lose because what's that mean for their championship window? We're interested when they win because what does that mean for the playoff run we're going to see? That teeter-totter suddenly falls wildly uneven when it's interesting because, well, it's interesting because it sucks and it's imploding in front of our eyeballs. Like, that's my fear as somebody that loves Steph and loves Giannis and loves the concept of the 2K combination of them. I love the concept of the inside-outside game that it presents, but that's two guys. And I just keep going back to, I don't believe you win sustainably in the NBA without a bunch of guys. Part of the reason Golden State is where they are right now is not just that they've had injuries this year, it's that they've never been able to restock the shelves. The cupboards are bare because they just haven't gotten it right over and over and over again. So as much as I want to credit the greatness of Golden State and the run that they had because they got it so right, I also have to look at it now and say, hey, this is not a wild, unpredictable problem. This is a problem from the fact that you drafted like junk for a long time. You just never found the next group of guys to be your group of guys. And now you're stuck here with a roster that's just absolutely failed and a couple of superstars. That's exactly what they be with Giannis. It's just better superstars. Like, it's great. They'll win a 3 seed in the West, and they'll have a nice little run in the Western playoffs, but it won't lead to championships, and I want to see championships for the legacy of Golden State.
And I want to go back to one thing that you said about moving on from Steph. And maybe it feels like the obvious thing to do at this point from somebody who's not invested into the fan base, whose future and livelihood does not rely on the decisions that we make for this team. So, and I'm with you. It does feel like the clear and obvious thing to do. Tear it down, rebuild. Your head coach literally just said and just acknowledged that we are not equipped right now. We are not built to compete in the Western Conference Finals. We're not built to compete in the West. How many teams do we have to name in order to get to the Golden State Warriors right now in terms of the hierarchy in the West? 7? So it's easy for us to say that. But I can't imagine how you would sell that to a fan base. How you would sell that to Steph Curry himself. Hey, things aren't going according to plan. We're not a contending team. We're going to trade you. How do you rationalize that? How do you sell that? How do you PR that. When Steph means as much as he does to an organization, to a fan base, and to a city. From a player who has said, I want to be a one franchise guy. Like, I want to retire a Warrior. I want to be a Warrior forever. I don't know at what point that changes or when Steph's priorities change. Maybe Steph does, like, through thick and thin, whatever it might be. Steph wants to be a Warrior. Maybe that's what he wants. And I think as an organization, to a certain extent, you do have to respect your superstar's wishes. Maybe at some point, Steph says, look, I want to win one more before I hang it up. I want to go somewhere I can win a championship. Again, I do think that you have to respect your superstar's wishes. But how do you sell that to a fan base? Trading Steph Curry.
You don't. And to that point, you really have to honor what Steph wants. If Steph wants to stay, then you let him stay. But the only thing that I would say is that one way or the other, whether it's by trade and assets and an intentional beginning of a rebuild, or whether you just wake up one day, Steph has stepped away from the game, I think there's an inevitability of no Kerr on the sidelines and no Steph on the court. And however you start that era, like, you're going to have to go through that era. So to me, yeah, you're 1,000% right that it's almost impossible to sell to a fan base, hey, we're letting Steph go. We're trading Steph somewhere else. That is just a terrible – like, I'd love to see Steph play his entire career. But when you take some of the words of Kerr – and we've asked on this show, we've asked NBA experts on this show, are we sure that Kerr's going to be on this sideline forever? And the answer we've gotten is no. I think there's a –
emphatically
realistic, no. Right. I think that there's a realistic chance that we're going to look at the sidelines of this team and look on the court, and it's going to look vastly different. So the question is, how do they get – ahead of it? A lot of time to figure it out, but Golden State season has certainly gone off the rails. Plenty to break down, but coming up next, we're going to get back to, let's say, a little word of warning coming from one of the best. Stephen Godfrey going to give us at least a little nudge of maybe some of the information we need from the college football landscape for some of the big names that are about to be taken in this year's draft.
You covered Darnold with the Jets. Where are you kind of just feeling about him?
Another game with 3 games in a row, no turnovers for Sam. The sack avoidance night from Sam was incredible. The back and forth between Sam and Milton Williams was honestly really impressive for Sam on my part, because I thought that it wasn't his best game of the season, but it was the game he needed to have, which was clean. He won the Super Bowl. He's going to get a contract extension. It's kind of cool to see his redemption story.
What was it like being at MSG? Like in the back, the locker room, like could you feel that it was a little different?
It's a total different experience from being there as a spectator to actually being there backstage and all of that stuff. Total different experience. I was so tuned into my fight. I don't even think I was looking at the referee. I'm just there, just kind of just like looking down. I'm listening to what he's saying. At the same time, I'm just thinking about the fight. I'm like, yeah, all right, y'all done? You ready? Right? Yeah. All right, it's time to go.
The Premier League has gotten so successful. Survival has become such a priority. Maybe that doesn't lead to the most entertaining football match.
The one thing that you want to avoid is having this runaway first place team by Boxing Day, which happens more often than not. This has been, I would argue, a little bit more exciting this season. The entire mid-table is packed.
Yeah.
So
as an Everton fan, I'm like, yeah, we in the mix.
For Clippers fans, I just feel bad, Tom. I mean, I feel bad. It's always something with the Clippers. It's always something. And then, the year begins and the whole aspiration thing, and then the team sucks. And then they start winning and they make a run and they're in the play-in and the playoffs are ahead. And then this all happens. James Harden does it again. He asks for another trade.
Fernando Mendoza is at the top. Ty Simpson is up next. Who would you take as your QB3 in the NFL draft class? Raises some questions, but also a need for some insight. The great Stephen Godfrey joins us now. You can obviously check him out. He's with us all the time, but also College Football Inquirer. And Godfrey, I'm really excited about this because I know you want to give out some words on some of these quarterbacks we're about to talk about. And I love this.
Oh, yeah, draft expert.
No, but that's the point. I keep telling, as somebody that has been lucky enough to cover the draft, this will be my 10th year covering the NFL draft. I've covered it every year of my career. And I genuinely believe this. I believe if you want the best draft analysis, don't listen to draft guys, listen to college football guys. Because college football guys have been covering these guys for ages. So I'm going to ask you to make us smart. Well, let's start with that one. He's up here. You've got a little word of warning. Right. Give me your PSA about my man crush and the savior of my franchise, the one, the only, the great Fernando Mendoza. Now give it to me, Godfrey.
So he's bought all the way in, I can tell. So is this been a thing that we're
Oh, no. We had a video of Fitz at the Super Bowl on his knees with his hands up in prayer, shouting up to the heavens, Fernando.
Yeah, that happens.
Fitz, I can't even make. I mean, because we both cheer for such terrible. Like, yeah, I too. My favorite sports team is a terrible NFL franchise, so I can't really make fun because I get it. Like, you're gonna overinvest. So this is what I like in this process too, is that every year, I took a long time to get out of college, not because I'm a doctor, but because I was a little bit of we'll call it a screw up, since this is a family program. Anyway, I was on like a 6.5-year study plan with some intermittent breaks for, academic pursuits. Anyway, every year at the draft, I'm always like, because I cover college football, it kind of is that feeling of like where your friends are like, oh, well, I got a degree, I'm going to go get a job. And I'm like, ugh, like, really? That seems terrible. And so when the draft comes around, everyone's like, yeah, I mean, would you hand this guy that you saw play on Saturday, $60 million? And I'm like, I don't know, man, to be totally honest. Like, this phenomenon, as whatever kind of college football media professional I am, has existed for a long time, where all my years in writing college football, thank you for that intro, Fitz, because more people should listen to us. I feel like every year there's like at least one or two quarterbacks where the NFL people, they all show up, they parachute in February, and they're like, this guy's a guaranteed first rounder. And all of us college people who know nothing because of our dumb backwards, redneck sport, we're like, dog, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'd invest in a jet ski dealership. My guy, that doesn't sound like a sound financial return. And yet it happens every year. So let's start with Fernando. Would you feel this way, Fitzy, if he had stayed at Cal and piloted some amazing LA Bowl type season at 7-5?
No.
Okay. It was one season. I like him. I was there in Miami when he did that sort of like M. Bison torpedo lunge move thing, and he won a national championship. And like, I'm not taking anything away from his skill set. I am just a little bit frightened by. There it is. Look at that. Look, great production team. Look at that. Doesn't it look like a Street Fighter 2 move?
Truly.
I of all the quarterbacks we're going to talk about today, I'm not going to take I want to take the wind out of your sails, Fitzy. I think he's great. I don't know if a reliable single season in college, even at the highest level and winning the Heisman, short of Cam Newton, automatically locks you to the level of hype he is receiving. Sometimes I just like, man, those player comps are preying on my soul in this graphic. Sorry, I got distracted from myself. I also don't think he has the same style of play as Matt Ryan at all. I think he's a little bit more physical. I like him, Fitz. And given the state of the franchise that you cheer for, I don't hate this move. So I'm going to give you a gentle sort of check. Not a check plus. It's going to be fine. I don't think he's going to be the guy that 5 years from now people bring up on the joke, on the listicles on the internet, and they're like, can you believe they drafted him in the first round? I don't know if he's going to be a franchise savior either. I think he might just be good. Like, what if he's just Jared Goff? Would you be happy with Jared Goff?
Yes. At this point, yes. I would be happy. If he's just Jared Goff, if he can win a bunch of games, you put him around. I think your point is a valid one, though. Like, I've started to now go back and watch some of the Cal games, and you're 1,000% right. Like, it's a much different beast when you look at him at Cal versus looking at him in Indiana, for sure.
Right. Okay. All right. We have another list. I can't remember. I gave it to the producer, so someone set me up. Live TV.
I do. Before we move on to the rest of the list, because this is a great rest of the list. First of all, love this because I do feel like a football hipster sometimes whenever we go through the draft process. Like, everybody told me that Joe Milton was going to be the savior of the Patriots franchise. And I was like, do not let the video of him throwing an orange 150 yards downfield distract you from the fact that he cannot hit a receiver if it hit him in the face. Like, we do this every single year. Same thing with Cam Skattebo. Yeah, everyone in the NFL was like, this guy's super funny. And I'm like, yeah, where were you last year? I digress.
It feels like dating red flags, doesn't it?
It does.
It feels like dating red flags.
Like,
yeah.
I'm telling you my literal experience of watching this guy, and you don't want to listen to me, but please, by all means, get hurt. He's going to cheat on you.
Did you see
He
that?
did it before. He'll
Did
do
you see
it
that
again.
SNL skit that Sabrina Carpenter skit where the whole time they're like asking serious questions about the guy, and she keeps going, he's 6'5". He's 6'5".
He's tall.
Yeah, he's 6'5", and that's the answer for everything. He's Cam Skattebo. Oh, he's wacky. His leg exploded because you overused him, and he may have had durability issues in the first place because he ran his ass off in college, but he's fun. So yeah, the draft is always a reminder that people with money don't necessarily correlate with people with intelligence. That's how the American economy works, folks. Like, not everybody who's rich deserves it, and not everybody who's rich even knows a damn thing about having money, but it's fun. That's how you end up with Florida.
It is fun. You say Fernando Mendoza, it's a 1-year sample size. Fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, check mark.
Joe Burrow. 1-year sample size.
Ooh. I think Joe Burrow was a victim
Savior
of a different
franchise.
Circumstance. Yes, totally. Also, one of the greatest college football seasons in history. One of the greatest college football teams in history. I'm going to play to both hosts today. I'm just going to try and make everybody feel good here. No, Joe Burrow, I think, was a slightly different. Yeah, I also think that Ohio State made the wrong move when he went through the quarterback competition the first time when he was in Columbus. And so I think that's a big part of it. I don't know if Mendoza operates in the same space there. So I would still, when Burrow went off the board, that was the pandemic draft, right? When everyone was doing it from home and Belichick put his dog up. The college football Congress, we all kind of, right? Like, we were fine with Joe Burrow, even though technically it was a 1-year sample. But I think the Ohio State bona fides had something to do with that as well.
So give us your PSA on Drew Aller.
Watch the tape. So I was talking to producers yesterday about this segment, and I'm like, all right, first round or like top quarterbacks in NFL draft. This is what we do every year in college. We're like, that guy? What does Drew Aller need to show you? Drew Aller got a lot of people fired at Penn State. I'm not saying it was entirely his fault, but if you think about where we were positioning Penn State as a brand, as a national title, they were the shoo-in to play Texas in the national championship this past year. That didn't happen. I need to know why Drew Aller is somehow greater than the sum of what of his collegiate parts, if you will. Kind of clunky there. I'll work on that. There's nothing in his tape that shows me NFL ability consistently. It's weird because, and this is where people who know way more about the game come in and they try and just talk over you, or they're like, well, you don't understand. He's got this kind of release angle and he's got this kind of arm string and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's great. He had all that stuff at Penn State. This isn't a situation where he was at some middling group of 5 school and elevated them, but they only won 8 or 9 games. And so you're kind of finding that diamond in the rough, right? It's not that. This guy was afforded every offensive weapon you could. Right, he had the best collection of tight ends in the nation the season before last, and then Penn State broke the bank and brought in every transfer receiver they could to make a national title run, not a playoff run, not a conference run, a national title run. So this is where this goes back to and I threw out a couple of names when we were talking about this. For some reason, people kind of talk themselves into a Ryan Tannehill, right? This is kind of the same process where it's the raw measurable stuff that everybody kind of obsesses over this time of year somehow overtakes the reality of what that individual did in college. And so this is why when people are talking about Drew Aller and KWIII Klubnik, I'm like, well, if you want to, that's fine. I get that everybody needs quarterbacks and it's a quarterback lead. My team needs a quarterback right now, but I just, Mitch Trubisky's another one where it just feels like somehow between the end of college football season, I don't know how this happens. Maybe it's just because there's so much NFL media, right? The NFL machine just sort of elevates these guys who aren't who never really had that level of esteem or production in college. I don't understand it. I would ask NFL people, but they usually just kind of look down on me. So I don't get it. And then we're right, by the way. We all made fun of the Trubisky thing. And then no, by the way, no one in NFL media ever comes back and yeah, we really duffed that one. Sorry. Yeah. No one ever says that. They just move on to the next guy.
Speaking of moving on to the next guy, KWIII Klubnik.
Hey. This always felt like a failure to launch. One of the things in college that you should know is that Dabo Swinney kind of has like his guys, his culture, and his apparatus at every level of Clemson. And that worked in developing someone like Trevor Lawrence, who had a better overall skill set than Klubnik, right? That we've seen Clemson turn out NFL talent, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, at the highest levels. But the development of Klubnik was such that he actually kind of broke his rule, Swinney, and brings in Garrett Riley, the OC from TCU, kind of like a Texas air raid guy to try and fix what was going on. And it never really worked. It never really happened. So again, much like Drew Aller, I have a buyer beware alarm that goes off when I look at college football programs with money, with good coaching, with depth of resources, the ability to bring in great receivers, the ability to have a decent offensive line, right? There were some issues over the years at Clemson. It wasn't perfect, but then to see underperformance consistently at the quarterback position and it, yeah, I don't know if you fire Dabo necessarily for some of the years that Klubnik had, but Clemson's now on a very, very different trajectory in college football, and he was the figurehead while that happened. I'm not putting everything on the quarterback for what's going on at Clemson or with Aller at Penn State, but this is the time of year where people scrutinize every aspect of these guys and try and figure out if they can lead a $1 billion franchise. So I guess I am doing that, and I would be, from a collegiate standpoint, really wary of handing one of these individuals the reins to a franchise.
This is why you should listen to College Football Inquirer. We're going to keep doing this. I've made this executive decision. I want to do this for other positions and get your thoughts on some of these college football guys as we get closer to the draft. But make sure you listen to College Football Inquirer. Follow him on social media at 38 Godfrey. Stephen Godfrey, always doing great work, man. We appreciate you. I will take your PSA.
Thank you.
And I will crumple it up and still scream Fernando as often as possible. But you are
Go
right.
Raiders.
You are right, good sir. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Stephen. Always appreciate it. Yes.
I'm also 6'5".
Oh,
he's tall.
No, 5'9"
works.
and a quarter
He's
over
tall.
here. I used to be 5'9" and a half. I'm shrinking. Jayson Tatum,
You too
not
can date Sabrina Carpenter.
He's growing right now. Jayson Tatum could date Sabrina if he wanted to. We'll talk about Tatum's return coming next.
Who's the dream fight? Like, who's the final boss for you?
Now anyway.
Yeah, that's the one. Huh?
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy.
What a freaking fight that would be.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
How far away do you think you are from this, like, maybe being a thing?
I would say maybe a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just a year away. Yeah, it's
the
right
dream
there.
to try to, like, get more belts so that entices him to come after you? Okay.
100%. He's going to get a wake-up call fighting a guy like me.
And Kenneth Walker wins Super Bowl MVP.
The way he's kind of molded his game to work for him has been fun because it's such a hard turn from where he started. Sometimes it feels like even a more dramatic version of like how Le'Veon Bell used to run the ball, how Le'Veon would stop and wait and see things open. But Le'Veon, like, he was hugging the ass of his centers and his guards. Kenneth is like, he's like step back so he can see the whole picture open up. And then when it hits, he's off.
The Sixers, to me, are the biggest loser of the trade deadline. You get these middling picks for Jared McCain, one of your most promising young players, to duck the tax. Just a joke. If I'm a Sixers fan, I'm infuriated. The Sixers, losers this trade deadline. It's just so disappointing for Philadelphia, man.
Who in college football could experience that same level of redemption arc? And I was thinking, we've actually kind of seen it a little bit in the past. I would say Jayden Daniels did. Remember when his teammates were like throwing his things out of his locker and talking trash about him when he left Arizona State, and then he goes and wins the Heisman at LSU?
It was a little bit of a turnaround. I wonder what those guys are doing now.
All signs are pointing to Jayson Tatum returning this Friday against the Dallas Mavericks, according to Bill Simmons. Oh, my God, it's really happening. This is not a drill. We're all running around the office trying to figure out what all of this means. Caroline, for all of the conversation, remembering that it was a torn Achilles last May, here we sit less than a year later, and right now all signs are pointing to the return of Tatum for a Celtics team that's already exceeded every single expectation we could have. This feels like the Disney moment, right? Like this feels like the storybook ending to a season where suddenly Boston is catapult and all of a sudden they're the favorites to win it all. Tell me I get my storybook ending.
This is like Bobby Boucher coming back to the end of the Bourbon Bowl. Like, this is like, oh, you think that we look scary now? You haven't seen nothing yet. And then Jayson Tatum just pops out like WWE style. I love your storybook ending. I'm always going to sign up for a storybook ending. This Celtics team without Jayson Tatum looks terrifying. I mean, just watch what they did to the Bucks, obliterating the Bucks last night without Jayson Tatum. Jaylen Brown playing at an MVP caliber level. Adding Jayson Tatum, I mean, it's the cherry on top of everything. I also cannot shake how dominant OKC looks at full strength. So if we're talking about a totally healthy SGA, totally healthy Chet, totally healthy OKC team taking on a Celtics team with Jayson Tatum in the NBA Finals. First of all, sign me up for that. I am here for that. I can't take anyone over OKC when that team is at full strength, with or without Jayson Tatum. It'd be pretty darn close to a fairy tale ending if they just get to a finals. Obviously, winning a finals would be the ultimate Disney Channel story. But I can't take anyone in the East over OKC right now.
I think that's probably fair. To me, it's almost like two separate conversations. If you bring in Tatum, like if we just give benefit of the doubt here, we presume that Tatum comes in and just reassimilates into this offense and this team incredibly flawlessly. I like the fact that there's plenty of time left in the regular season for him to work himself into shape and for them to figure out how the ball is going to move with him back on the court. Like, I think there's a lot of benefit to that. If I give it all the benefit of the doubt, the Celtics clearly become the favorite in the East. I don't think that's even questionable. Now, the question then becomes, what does it mean for the West, where, frankly, you know that we're obsessed with OKC. We're obsessed with San Antonio. I remain obsessed with the possibility of what Denver can do. So I think the Celtics put themselves in the same category as those teams. I think they put themselves in the same spectrum as those teams. Does it make them better than OKC or better than look, Tatum on the floor is not going to change the fact that there's no great matchup in a 7-game series for anybody against Wemby, right? Like, Tatum on the floor isn't going to change the fact that if you're taking on Denver, you're going to have to figure out a way to slow down Jokic. Like, Tatum on the floor doesn't necessarily solve the ills of what you have trying to slow down the opposition. But Tatum on the floor, to me, raises the floor of the Celtics from a team that I think could go to the NBA Finals to a team that I think should go to the NBA Finals. In this system, like, you get Tatum back on the floor, it's going to make them, to me, better than Detroit, clearly, better than Cleveland, because I still don't trust Harden to be able to play basketball in a playoff series, clearly. So it elevates them. But this is a team that we've seen with Tatum and Brown win an NBA championship. So there's a level of been there, done that. There's a level of dominance that comes right back to it. So I'm at least intrigued. I don't think anybody in the East could give the Thunder a better 7-game series than a fully armed Celtics team can. So I think they could give them the toughest run. Can they beat them? I don't know. But I don't think anybody from the East could give a better run to any team in the West than a fully loaded Celtics team can.
I always think about the factor of if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Is there that is a factor at play at all here? That, okay, you have this Celtics team that is reeling right now. Jaylen Brown playing, at his absolute ceiling. That adding Jayson Tatum into the mix, it feels a little bit too good to be true, right? Are we underestimating a factor of a ramping up period here? Are we underestimating a factor of you've had this team, this core playing together since the beginning of the season, going back to training camp, and then now you're adding a new element to it, new with an asterisk. I know Jayson Tatum isn't new to the Celtics, but new to this dynamic that they've built this season. I'm not saying that will happen, but I am saying that, maybe there is an element of it's not just plug and play. Like, this isn't video game basketball. This isn't basketball that you just play on paper, because on paper, a great team gets better with Jayson Tatum, but that's not real life basketball, Fitzy. What is your element of concern? I think, don't want to be dramatic here, but element of concern that adding Jayson Tatum into the mix may disrupt things temporarily.
I think there's a bit of a readjustment, because certainly Jaylen Brown, who, by the way, didn't even play last night in that slaughter of the Bucks, but Jaylen Brown has been such a key cog for all of this. He's going to have to sort of learn what his role is when he's splitting some of that, right? So I do think that that's fair. If I'm going to be consistent, though, we talked on this show, and I don't have the updated number here, but as of a couple of weeks ago, the biggest stars of OKC had only played 42 minutes together all year, right? So if I'm going to talk about the need for Tatum and Brown to figure out like how that offense runs together, isn't it also fair to say, well, OKC's going to have a readjustment period as well? Now, we don't say that because OKC's coming off of a championship. But again, that's where I come back to the Celtics aren't that far removed from a championship with these key pieces. Like, how much different would our entire view of the Celtics look if Tatum hadn't hurt that Achilles last year? I think the Celtics last year went into that this portion of the season when Tatum was hurt with the real expectation that they were going to be able to get back to the NBA Finals and maybe win another championship. So I think that is there a reacclimation? Probably, but the fact that we're not that far removed from greatness from this roster as constructed essentially, I think that there's a real chance to get right back. It's like riding a bike at that point for them as much as it is for OKC, who's also missed so much time this year.
Yeah, and the OKC point is a very fair one. I also don't think it's a totally apples to apples comparison for a couple of reasons. One, this core has only played a limited number of minutes, the fewest number of minutes together in any other team in the NBA, but it's not one piece that's been gone the entirety of the season that's coming back in the most critical point in this season. It's been, injuries here and there. This guy's hurt. It hasn't been such a drastic change of one guy's out and you're adding another guy. The other thing too is we've seen OKC be able to play really good basketball when they're playing their JV squad, when they're playing their B team. So it's like Oklahoma City has shown us time and time again and proven to us time and time again that they don't need their starting five on the court on any given night. It's a level of depth down up and down the roster, a level of depth on their bench that's proven to be reliable. It's a fair point, but I think also same but different. You bring up the Achilles. I mean, yes, if Jayson Tatum didn't tear his Achilles last season, of course we would look at the Celtics differently. Of course. Losing your star player changes everything, changes your perception of everything. I'm only bringing up the reacclimation period or the ramping up period because I think it's a realistic thing, but I also don't think it's something that's going to derail the Celtics season entirely. Of course not. That would be selling Jayson Tatum short. That would be selling what he matters, what he brings to this team, how much he matters to this team wildly short.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the ceiling for Tatum is so high. And part of this is that I believe Joe Mazzulla has done such an incredible job as a coach. This puts a lot more on Joe Mazzulla to figure it out. But my God, if we came into this year, if when Tatum went down against the Knicks, if we had said at the time, well, next season they won't even take a step back with Tatum, I think everybody would be having a real conversation about, Joe Mazzulla, Coach of the Year. I think he's still in that conversation, should be in that conversation. He's going to prove that right now, though, because he's going to have to be great for the course of this. For this to work, Caroline, he's going to have to be great.
And it's not just Jayson Tatum. It's moving on from Al Horford in the offseason. It was moving on from Kristaps Porzingis in the offseason. And then also the Jayson Tatum injury. It's all of these new pieces and a lack of turnover from last year's roster that Joe Mazzulla was able to keep intact and continue to make this team a championship contender. I've been saying it for weeks. Joe Mazzulla needs to be getting more love and more in the conversation for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, in Mazzulla, I trust. I trust he's going to be able to do this. I trust he's going to make the most of it, and I trust we will cover it all week long. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for more Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching. Come back and see us tomorrow.